Hello, and welcome to another episode of the Motherhood podcast. We have a really special guest today, April, who does prenatal, postnatal yoga. And I was honored to take some of her classes when I was pregnant with my first daughter. And she also, she just is starting this virtual yoga. And she also taught yoga at our conference already 2 years ago. It was in 2019. And little did we know that that was the last year, 2019, we were able to hold an in-person conference, but April did teach yoga at our conference 2 years ago. So we were really honored to have her there. If you would like to get our weekly podcast automatically sent to your phone, just hit the subscribe button. And then also we'd really appreciate it if you left us a rating. And we are now recording video to our podcast. I know it's a little new still, but we are also linking the video portion in the show notes if you want to see the video portion. And then what's really unique about this episode is that in the last, 10 to 20 minutes, April is actually going to go through a yoga session with me. And so if you want to follow along on the video portion, I will link just the yoga portion in our show notes so you can follow along just for that session. And it's going to be very basic. So, you don't have to be overwhelmed that you don't have to have done yoga before or be really good at yoga in order to do it. It's just very basic core strengthening workouts, those sorts of things. As always, consult with your doctor if you're pregnant or postpartum before doing some sort of yoga. But with that, I'd really love to welcome April. Thank you so much for joining us today.
Thanks so much for having me. I'm excited to be here, Emily.
Well, I'm really excited, especially too for the yoga portion too, and also just to hear everything that you've been up to since 2020, because I know I've been following your social media page, and I know you've had to go virtual with a lot of the yoga instructions since obviously, there's no real explanation for 2020, we can just say, because of, all the 2020 shenanigans that were happening. But for everyone who isn't familiar with you, I'd love for you to just talk a little bit about yourself, your background, and a little bio.
Yeah, awesome. So my name is April, and I am the founder of Unfold Yoga, which is transitioning into a new version of itself, which is Unfold Motherhood and Wellness. And I teach prenatal yoga, postnatal yoga. I'm a birth doula, a childbirth educator, a placenta encapsulation specialist. And I've been doing this for 10 years. I got into it because of my first pregnancy, and I just kind of fell in love, and I wanted to empower other women on their journey. Since 2020, I've definitely transitioned a lot. So I'm creating my first online course, and it's been a pretty massive undertaking. It is prenatal yoga, childbirth education, and meditation with live coaching. So essentially, I'm going to get to doula a lot more pregnant people than my normal one-on-one client. So that's kind of where I am now. I'm still offering in-person classes at a local park across the street from my studio. So I still get some interaction there, but it's been an adventure, and I just keep diving a little deeper into the birth world all the time.
So you mentioned that you started doing yoga 10 years ago with the birth of your child. What drew you to yoga in particular around the time that you were pregnant and postpartum? What sort of drew you into, I guess, just starting it and then also continuing to do it?
So I had always liked yoga, but I was more of an athlete. So I would practice it here and there. My mom was actually really into yoga, and I liked it. I liked the calming effect, I think, more than anything. And I would pick it up, and I was really regular, and then I would drop it for a while, and I would come back to it and remember why I loved it. And I had been away from the practice for probably a good year and a half. And I was pregnant with my first. And I thought, I should try prenatal yoga. And it wasn't as popular or easy to find as it is now. So I had to really scour to find a class. I found one class, and it was right at the end of my workday. So I had to actually leave work early to rush to my prenatal yoga class. And I really loved it. And I knew pretty quickly that I wanted to teach prenatal yoga. And I loved my teacher, and I just took her class for my entire pregnancy. But I was really bummed that I could only do it once a week and that there were only 3, 4 other people in the class. So I connected with them and we kind of created our own community, but I just wanted more. So I knew I wanted to teach prenatal yoga. And then I I went into the birth of my baby thinking, I do yoga, I work out, I took a class and I read some books. I'm fine. Like this is a normal process. Though deep down, I thought I was going to die. Like, I thought I was literally going to die. Um, it was terrifying. And I had the most medical experience because it was an induction and I didn't ask the right questions. And I came really close to having a C section. And then postpartum was really hard as well. And there were actually no postpartum classes in my area that I knew of at the time. So I kind of went through postpartum alone. And when my daughter was 8 months, I signed up for a teacher training. I did my teacher training and then I went right into prenatal. And that's when I learned there was a whole nother world that I didn't know existed. And I took my doula training and I took my childbirth education training. And I was like, I'm going to teach prenatal yoga and I'm going to make the community that I really wish I had. And I want to say it was about a year later, I found my studio space and the rest is kind of history. And the reason I do it is to empower women so they don't have that experience that I had and so that they have that community through their pregnancy and through their postpartum because I know how important it is.
Well, you've done a great job because in Orange County, where both of us live, that whenever a pregnant mom is interested in doing yoga, you're the first name that pops up, Unfold Yoga. So it's obviously you've accomplished your mission. So it sounds like listening to you that there's two aspects that really drew you to yoga, the calming effect and then also the community aspect. I'd love for you to touch more on the calming effect of yoga and what are the benefits of doing yoga, before being pregnant, while you're pregnant, postpartum, or even if you're in between children, or if you've never had children. What are the benefits that you've seen from doing yoga?
Yeah, so there are obviously many benefits of yoga, and I think the benefits actually change slightly depending upon the time of life that you're in. The benefit that I really think people derive the most, or that's the most necessary that we need in our society, is that space that it creates. No matter what type of yoga that you're taking time out for yourself and you're tuning in. So when we go work out at a gym, there's a lot happening and we're kind of part of that. But when we go to yoga, it's just us on our mat. No one else in that space matters. And we've carved that time out for us. And we're bombarded by so much as we go about our day. It's hard to turn off our mind. And yoga gives us that time of space to just reset and come back to ourselves. And that's important no matter where you are in the journey. The benefits physically include, strengthening your body, but also softening your body. And that's really important for prenatal. We're always thinking like, oh, we need to get stronger. We need to Kegel more. And yes, strength is good. But if you have too much strength and too much tension, your body is actually weak. So prenatal yoga teaches us to soften and make the body and the pelvic floor especially supple so it can support your baby and your body throughout your pregnancy. And then so if you do have a vaginal delivery, it's a little bit easier. It's not only easier for the pushing phase, but it's easier for the healing phase as well. And I think that's huge. Most people don't really know anything about the pelvic floor. It's my favorite topic. So I'm always sharing lots of
It's my
tidbits on
favorite
that.
topic too. So that's why I'm smiling and nodding and saying, yes, the pelvic floor. So
Yes, we need to talk about it more. So I talk about the pelvic floor a lot, and that's in all my classes. I think it's important, no matter what stage you are in your life, to be aware of the changes of the pelvic floor and how to make it healthy. I trained with Leslie Howard a couple years ago, and that was really eye-opening. Learning that most of us actually have tight pelvic floors and that Kegels are not necessarily the answer. And for pregnancy, prenatal yoga makes space, and it makes space for your baby. So you have less aches and pains throughout your pregnancy. And if your baby has more space, your birth can be that much easier. And if you've been able to
Mhm.
do the practice throughout your pregnancy, your healing postpartum is going to be a little bit easier as well. And then postpartum, I think the benefit of doing yoga is mental more than anything.
Yeah, I love how you break it up into those different stages of life. And I know that my long term listeners are probably so tired of me talking about the pelvic floor, but it's so important, and there's so much evidence based research behind what you just said about the pelvic floor, that you have to really stretch it and not just keep on strengthening it and doing your Kegels. We have an episode that's with Dr. Betsy Caldwell. You should follow her on Instagram too and check out our previous episodes on that. She does, we have a series, 4 mini episodes that are only like 10 to 15 minutes long, where she basically talks about different aspects of the pelvic floor, pelvic breathing, pelvic floor positive breathing, and then also why Kegels are bad for some women and actually a lot of women. And so that's really bad advice that they're always given to women, are always given to just do your Kegels. But that's one thing that I've recently become interested in yoga, is for that stretching and that aspect of it as well. What about the community aspect? Because I know that you said in the postpartum period that's the most important. I know a lot of us, especially after 2020, are really aching for community, and you're kind of providing that too virtually. So tell us about that.
Yeah, so community postpartum is it's part of your mental health. It's going to help you kind of feel like you're not insane because you're sleep deprived and your body is healing. And if it's your first, you just really have no idea like what's happening. You're in a fog. So postpartum, I think having that community to just hear what other women are going through, realizing you're not alone, and having a sounding board. When we had the studio and we had our baby and me classes, I would have moms tell me, "Oh, I can't leave the house. It's too stressful. And what if the baby cries or they need like their diaper changed?" And I say, they are going to cry and they are going to need their diaper changed, and it's okay. Like, this is a space where you're going to do what you can, and we all help each other, and you're going to realize that her baby cries too, and she didn't even get to do any yoga today, but she's there and she's breathing and she's spending time with other people. So many times, the first place that my students have come to outside of their house is yoga. And it was the first place that they
Mm,
felt they could come and just be as they are in their postpartum phase, messy hair, dirty shirt, and they felt safe and they felt comfortable. And afterwards, they realized, like, oh, it's okay if I go out in public and my baby cries, or if I'm in line at Starbucks and my baby has a blowout. Like, that's part of this process. And I don't think
mhm.
we realize that's what it's like. It's a little messy. And even virtually,
I
it's
was
not quite the same. It's not quite the same
definitely.
virtually, but we still get that combo.
I wish I knew that after the birth of my daughter too, because unfortunately there is that societal pressure of not having your baby cry, because people give you dirty looks if your baby cries, or if you have a blowout or you're just flustered or whatnot. Our society, unfortunately, especially people who don't have any kids, or if maybe they do have kids but they've just never really taken care of them that much, in the case of maybe some dads. I know dads nowadays tend to be more involved, but just in general, if maybe someone is a parent still not understanding that, it's, at least for me personally, it's taken me to just not care what other people think, which is really hard to do, to get over that. And then also just to speak up for yourself in public if someone does say something to you, and just not take it. And or maybe you don't have to say something, but then you just find your internal peace to let it go, which is also really difficult. So it's nice that you're providing that space for moms where they're not feeling judgmental, which is kind of shocking, but then relieving at the same time, right?
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, I'm sure you experienced that as well with your child. I guess what for you personally helped you overcome that sense of caring what other people said and just kind of be at peace and and provide that kind of community, because I feel like in order for you to provide that community to all of your clients and everyone who's doing yoga with you, that you would have to come to that place yourself. So what was your thought process to arrive to that conclusion?
I think a lot of that is the very messy and challenging postpartum experience that I had. I remember my older daughter, she cried all the time, and she actually liked my husband better than me. There were times where, because she was also colicky, and she would just cry and cry, and then I'd call her and be like, "You have to come home from work. Like I can't handle this. She just doesn't want anything to do with me." And he would come home and he would take her and she'd be fine. And I'd take her for a walk to Starbucks, and halfway there, I couldn't go because she was crying. I was like, all my kid does is cry. I can't
Mm.
even take her into Starbucks. It would have been fine.
Oh.
I could have gone in and got my coffee with my crying baby, who cares, right? But I really thought it mattered. And, healing from that experience and everything that came up during that experience, I think made me realize that doesn't matter. And it's important that we have a space where we realize this is motherhood and this is having a baby, and it's hard and it's messy and it's loud.
Mm.
And everybody was a baby. Like everyone was a crying baby once. So I think that really helped
Right.
me. Right? It helped me have open that space
Mhm.
and just tell the moms, it's messy and that's okay.
It's funny that you say that everyone's been a baby at some point, because that's the most shocking thing that I've realized during motherhood, is that there's so much judgment surrounding motherhood and mothers and babies and all of this, and society in general. I'm just speaking generally. Isn't that supportive of moms in the community, when it comes to if your child is crying at the store, or, in Starbucks or wherever you are, but then it's literally how the human race carries on, right? So it's such
Mhm.
an important job, but then our society just is so judgmental about it. And I don't know. I just think about that often, since I have a 5-month old, and constantly whenever I've had a baby, I'm reminded of the struggles of moms with very young children, and how unaccommodating the world is and society is in general to moms and kids, and especially moms of younger kids. And I'm just thinking, why, when this is literally how the world is continuing on?
It's very puzzling, that is for sure. They just reported that we have our lowest birth rate in a really, really long time. Um, Maybe there's something to that. We're not supporting mothers, we're not supporting families, and who
Right.
wants to have a kid when it's so hard and no one's supporting you and they expect you to do all of these things that are completely unrealistic.
Hmm.
So
What are some
it's
affirmations that you give to some of your patients then, or patient, what do you call them? Clients, patients? I don't know if I'm using the right terminology, but your
yeah.
students, probably, that's a better word. But
Yes, students
what do
work.
you tell your students, like any words of affirmation when they are taking your class, just to remind them that it's okay? Or do you say affirmation during a yoga session?
Yes. So with my postpartum moms, we'll always do some sort of affirmation. My favorite is, I'm losing my headphone. Let me grab that. So my favorite meditation or mantra for moms is peace begins with me. And
Mm.
the way that we do it in class is they just kind of move their finger. So peace begins with me. Your thumb comes to your first finger, your second finger, your third finger, and then your fourth, and you just keep repeating it to yourself. And I'll have them do that at the end of class. So a lot of times they're like feeding their babies and they're just repeating that mantra over and over in their mind. And I think it's
Mhm.
huge because when everything is
Mm.
chaotic, when one baby's crying and the other kid's trying to run away from you, you just got to take a breath and be like, okay, I got this. I'm calm. We're going to rein it
Mhm.
in. But I always try to give them mom's mantras. I'll also do something where they make up their own mantra. So I'll have them think about what
Mm.
they want to feel, and then they'll just put that in I am, and they insert the blank. And that's their mantra,
Mm.
just to repeat to themselves as much as they need.
Mm. I love that so much. And those are things too that we could even do throughout the day if we're not necessarily in a yoga session. And that's
Hmm.
something that I wanted to talk to you about too. That I know that doing yoga for a lot of moms, at least a lot of moms that I've talked to, it seems a little overwhelming because you have to put aside time and it seems like there's kind of like a high barrier to entry because you have to have like this perfect environment, all the zen. I don't know, at least for me personally, and then other moms that I've talked to, that's what we've always talked about. But it seems like that there's aspects of yoga, such as saying like a mantra or, doing the finger thing that you were saying that can calm you during your day and also just help you be present more to your children. So are there any other parts of yoga that you can bring to your daily life that you can kind of just do while you're nursing a baby or while you're watching your kids or maybe to calm yourself down in a situation when your kid's just screaming and you're trying to you keep your cool or something like that.
Yeah, so I actually think that's the real yoga. So the yoga that we do in this really zen space where it's quiet and peaceful and tranquil and it smells nice, that is great, but we can usually only get that if we go to a studio.
Right.
And creating the yoga of motherhood, I think, is really important, and it's going to look different for everyone. But the mantras, we'll write them on post-it notes, and I'll have the moms just kind of put them up where they'll see them as reminders. Breathing, so just pausing to take some deep breaths. We tend to breathe really shallow into our chest. So, when you get to a red light, take some deep breaths. And also realizing that when you have children, your yoga practice is not going to look the way that it did pre yoga. So I can't tell you how many times I have like repeat moms who are just like, oh, I just I can't do yoga at home because the baby and the house is messy. And I'm like, that's okay. Like that's part of your
Mhm.
practice now. We don't have that time and space that we had before children. So it's going to look different. And we really have to adjust that. So if you can do 5 minutes of yoga while your kids are playing on the floor,
Mhm.
great. You're going to feel better because you moved your body and you took a few moments to breathe. And then your kids might want to play along too. What I do now with my younger daughter's 5, and she's finally getting into yoga, and she loves Cosmic Kids yoga. So I'll
Oh, never
do
heard of that.
Cosmic Kids yoga with her, and I'm like, okay, well, I got in my yoga today. And, there were
Right.
toys all over and she was kind of running around, but I felt better afterwards. So
Mhm.
releasing expectation and just doing what feels right in the time and space that you allow and letting go of these expectations that don't actually exist.
Mm, I like that. What's the Cosmic Kids Yoga? I haven't heard of that before. Is that something that kids can do? It's a yoga
Mhm.
program for kids?
Yeah, it's on YouTube and she has a ton of videos. She's been doing it for a long time. And they're short ones and they're long ones and they're all different themes and there's Frozen and
Oh,
you name it,
nice.
it is up there. And she took it upon herself to be like, I want to do this yoga because she saw it on YouTube and she loves it, but she would not do yoga with me in the yoga studio at our classes. So
Mhm.
she gravitated towards that. It's a really great resource for kids. And then also, as parents, we can participate with them and it's fun.
What are some of the benefits that you've seen in your children doing yoga? Because obviously there's the benefit for yourself. I have a few friends that have struggled with anxiety. And, one thing that they've always been concerned about is passing on the anxiety to their children. And I've seen some other Instagram posts about moms talking about this as well. So is a calming effect also a benefit of kids doing yoga? And have you personally seen that in your children and other children you've seen doing yoga? And what other benefits have you seen too?
Yeah. So, but the kids in the yoga, it's really interesting because I see that children gravitate towards the practice. My youngest or my oldest was into yoga since she was very little. She used to just like randomly do downward facing dog when we were in line to get coffee. It was
Nice.
cute. It was really funny. But she's been into yoga since she was really young, and it does breed that sense of calm because she knows that she can take time out and just like sit still and breathe, and that affects her and how she feels.
Mhm.
She doesn't understand that it calms her, I don't think, but she knows that
Right.
she feels better when she does it. And there's this sense of confidence. So she actually, for her birthday, when she was, I think, 7, she had her friends come to the studio and she taught them a yoga class.
Oh,
And
nice.
she wrote it and she led it herself, and she made up this story, and she was so proud of herself, and the
Mm.
confidence that I saw in her from that is huge. When they realize like, oh, I can do this, whether they're teaching a class or they're just taking, a class on YouTube, there's a lot of confidence there, and it pulls them away from what they're usually in screens, and they're at school and they have a lot of stress
Mhm.
right now, and it just creates this imaginary world for them that's different than what they're used to. So I think kids in yoga
Mm.
is something that we need more of in our society.
Mm. Exactly, especially with all the screens and just how busy our society is in general. It would be nice to teach them those effects. And then I'm sure that then they will be able to carry that into adulthood as well. So that would benefit
Mhm.
them. Getting back into, I love how you talk about the yoga that you do throughout your day as the yoga of motherhood. I might just steal that as the podcast title for this episode because that's
Work.
just so beautiful. What are other things that we can do through our day? I was looking at your Instagram page, and some things that I saw that you show are how to roll over during pregnancy, ways to improve posture, and then a gentle wall flow. I don't know if there's any ones in particular that stick out to you, but I guess improving posture, just as we're saying, I'm like, ooh, I should improve my posture.
Yeah.
What are other things that you can do throughout your day? And maybe you could just kind of walk us through what those are. So anyone that's listening, we could just follow along to whatever it is that you recommend doing throughout our day.
I think having more awareness of your body in space is important, and that's very similar to the practice of yoga. So the posture post, how we stand, what are you doing? So I like to just occasionally when I'm sitting at my desk, I actually set timers. So I'm one of those weird people that I'm like, okay, for 10 minutes I'm going to check emails, and I set a timer for 10 minutes, and then after that I move to the next task. So I make sure that in between these projects, I get up and I stretch and I take a couple of deep breaths.
Mhm.
It takes 30 seconds. And then when I sit back down, I just realign myself. So I make sure that I'm untucking my tailbone, that my ribs are stacked on top of my pelvis, and that my
Mhm.
ears are on top of my shoulders, and I just sit up tall. And I think just
Okay.
continuously checking in with yourself throughout the day is really important. You're cooking dinner. How am I breathing? Oh, I'm not. And then just take a few deep breaths. So little things to add in
Mhm.
make a big difference. And I'm sure everyone that's listening is fixing their posture right now. They're like, "Oh yeah, my posture was way
Yeah,
way
that's what
out of
I'm doing
whack."
right now. I'm just like adjusting my posture. I'm like, ooh, am I tucking my tailbone? Or what does that mean? Because I used to be confused about that before I went to physical therapy. But what does it mean to like untuck your tailbone?
So if you've ever had someone sit on your lap and they had like a bony butt and you're like, so those are the
Yeah.
sits bones, and we have two sits bones. We
Hmm.
actually want to sit on our sits bones. And what we tend
Hmm.
to do is we actually tend to sit on our tailbone. And it's not really our fault.
Hmm.
It's the way that furniture is designed. So furniture is designed for, to look pretty, not to help us improve our posture. The car is also like your
Okay.
arch nemesis when it comes to posture. So you want to
Uh,
sit on those two bony portions of your pelvis, and then your tailbone is untucked. So if you kind of round your spine, that's sitting on your tailbone. So you just want to kind of bring it
okay.
forward and then lengthen up. So just being aware of your pelvis can make a huge difference in your alignment. And another little
Mm,
hack that I
I like that.
have is I have a squishy ball. So just like a kid's ball, I use yoga tune-up balls, and I take some of the air out of it and I put it right behind my low back, so right at my sports bra. So when I'm sitting in
Mm.
the car, everything is aligned and I don't have that kind of rounding.
Oh.
So it definitely helps.
I'm gonna have to try that because I still have terrible posture, even though I try to tell myself, oh, have good posture, but then yeah, I guess as you're saying, I didn't know all these little tips too. So I just mostly knew like the untucking tailbone, but not any of these other things. So it's funny when you said that the stretching only takes 30 seconds because that's one reason why I've never stretched my entire life. Because I know that we've heard, oh, stretching is good, stretching is good. And in our culture of just busyness and everyone just doesn't have any time, or we don't think we have any time, we think that stretching, again, it seems like there's just this big barrier to entry. And I don't, it's like this mental wall that a lot of us put up, like I don't have time, or stretching is something that requires the zen moment or something like that. But in my postpartum recovery, since I've been forced to stretch in order to heal, like literally, if I don't stretch regularly, then I'm in pain. So I've been forced to stretch. But then when I stretch, I realize, oh, that only took like 2 minutes, like literally 2 minutes out of my day. And
Mhm.
then I just tell me whenever I don't feel like stretching, I just tell myself it's only, or sometimes it's less, sometimes it's a minute, sometimes it's 30 seconds. It's only this amount of time. Why am I telling myself I don't have time for this? Even if the baby's crying, like you have 30 seconds, right? So I don't know if you've also had that kind of experience where it just seems like there's this mental barrier for actually doing something, or in any of your students. What are some things that we can tell ourselves so that we know that we do have the time and space to take 30 seconds or a minute for ourselves to do this?
So I always ask my students if they go on Instagram or Facebook. And they're like, oh, yeah, I probably spend too much time there. Like, yeah, I do sometimes. And I was like, oh, how long do you think you spend on social media? And you don't have to say it out loud, but just kind of think about it. Can you take 2 of those minutes to move your body? Because that's your yoga practice. And then I
Hmm.
think putting it into perspective of how much time we just kind of waste on Instagram scrolling, and turn it
Hmm.
to do something good for yourself so you feel better, makes something click. So just replacing a couple of minutes of your scroll with moving your body.
Hmm. I like that a lot. And that's true. It's funny because I've noticed and paid attention to, why do I go to these social media apps to scroll or whatnot? And I know that, there's that Netflix documentary on social media and everything like that. But I notice for me, I tend to do that more when I'm tired, because it's so mindless and I can't really think very well anyways, because if I've tried to replace that time with reading a book or something that's more intellectual, I just can't do it because my brain is literally fried. So I think that's one reason why the social media apps are just, it's a place you can go when your brain is fried and it's just mindless. But at the same time, that whenever I've done stretching instead, that you get all those endorphins flowing and then you actually feel a lot better after it. So I think that's a really good idea, what you said, to try to replace that with the social media scrolling or whatnot of that. Um, I'd love for you to talk more about your virtual classes and program that you're launching soon. I know that you've been gearing up to that and you've been posting a lot about that recently. So tell us more about that.
Yeah, so the program that I've created is prenatal yoga, and they're shorter classes. So the classes on the program are between 25 and 45 minutes, so they're easy to fit in. And then aside from just the prenatal yoga classes, there is what I call bite-sized childbirth education. So I do an
Mm,
introduction to the pelvic floor, to what to do instead
mm,
of Kegels, why we don't really recommend Kegels, and there are other things we can do that will benefit the pelvic floor more. There are things about optimal fetal positioning, all of these topics that usually do not get talked about in a typical childbirth class. So it's easy to digest. All the videos are really short. There's restorative yoga for pregnancy. There's meditations. So pretty much anything a mom needs. And then on top of that, it's I'm offering pregnancy coaching. So as a birth doula, I usually sit down with my clients. I answer all their questions, whatever these questions are. It could be, how do I know I'm in labor? What am I going to do if my water breaks? Is my water going to break before I go into labor? Why does my right hip hurt when I stand up? Whatever it is, I can support them and coach them. Obviously, I don't attend their birth, but essentially, they have access to a doula, a childbirth educator, and a movement professional through that program. So for me, I feel like I can support so many more people that are on the journey via this program. So I'm really really excited about it. It's been a journey to get here, considering I've never I've never done anything online since the world ended last year. So it's been a journey, but I'm really proud of it, and I'm excited to put it out there.
mm. I love that so much. So I know we're starting to get towards the time that we're going to do our little yoga session, but I'd love to ask a personal question that we always ask all of our guests, which is in line with our motto that there's no way to be a perfect mom, but many ways to be a good one. So I'm not sure if you really had a specific moment or kind of like an aha moment, or even if there wasn't one defining moment, but an example of a time where it just kind of reinforced your belief and awareness that there's no way to be a perfect mom, but then you were being a good one.
Yeah, so I would say I didn't really 100% realize that until I had my second kid. As you know, having two kids really, really changes everything.
Yep.
But I realized that I was doing a good enough job, and that by taking care of myself,
Hmm.
I was a better mom. And I think I might be a little bit of a workaholic, so that played into it, but I was just burnt out, and in my mind I felt like I should be doing all of these things. And then I realized I have to take care of myself, and I have to step away for that, and everything else doesn't
Mm,
really matter. Like I would say last year really like let me let go of things like how clean my house is and how productive I think I need to be. I just need to
mhm,
be good for me, and then I'm better for my kids.
mm. I love that so much. Well, thank you so much for coming on our podcast. And we're not ending the episode yet. We're just going to reposition ourselves so we can do a little yoga. So if you're listening to the audio version, April is going to guide us so you can follow along just listening. But if you want to watch as well, you can listen or you can click the link in the show notes to watch the video version as well. Or you could just keep on listening as well since we're going to set it up so you can do that. So, yeah, I guess I'll just hit stop right now and we can get into it.